And it's showtime with Bruce Forman. I love it. Oh, Bruce.
I tell you. Good to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. I was telling somebody the other day that when I moved to San Francisco, then I heard that Bruce Forman was there, and we had that 7 nights a week club, Pearls, which was a wonderful gift to have jazz 7 nights a week, thanks to Sonny and Pearl. And you were a regular feature there. And I just remember, just being absolutely intimidated by your chops and your musical ability. It's like, oh my gosh, this guy is just off the rails.
Well, we met each other through a mutual friend, a guy who mentored me a lot, Danny Spencer from Detroit. A drummer who taught me as much about swinging as anybody ever did. He told
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he told me when you came to town that you were coming to town. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Danny taught me a lot. I think probably a lot of people about swinging and playing for death. You know?
Yeah. I mean, God, I was so lucky that he moved to San Francisco when he did, and got a chance to play with him so much. And man, he's there's a lot of him in me. How to feel.
Oh, that explains a lot. So for those of you who don't know Danny Spencer, and actually my very first forays into video, which I had no idea what I was doing, was 100 years ago in Detroit. And I did a profile on Danny Spencer. So if you look up Jazz Masters Danny Spencer on YouTube, you will find this very rough and raw video on him. But it defines the kind of raw energy a la Tony Williams and Elvin Jones that embodied his playing. And so when you played with him, there was no fooling around. No, what time is it? Right?
So he of course, he came out to the West Coast, and we had a lot of great drummers in San Francisco.
Sure.
But when he came, that was like, Elvin just moved to town. I mean, it was just such a different thing. And of course, a lot of guys, of course, I mean, I seem to always find those guys that they're loved by some guys, and some guys just don't want to go near.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and Danny was one of those that I heard it, and I said, that's the shit. And so, I mean, he loved me, I loved him, and we played an awful lot.
Yeah. He was New York and San Francisco.
Yeah.
He was the antithesis of the West Coast, dainty kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was so welcome. I mean, I was amazed in San Francisco that there were so many East Coasters, that had made their home there.
Uh-huh.
And you yourself, I just learned you're from Brookline?
Well, no, my parents are both from Brookline. I was born in Springfield,
Okay.
which is, just down the road from you there. But my grandparents lived, in Brookline on Parkman Street and right by Coolidge Corner. And so, I mean, I did spend a lot of time back there. My parents moved to Texas when I was about 2, so I never really lived in Massachusetts. But I went back there a lot during summers and stuff, and to see my grandparents, and my parents would go home. So I guess I'm basically that, but I'm far, But the music I play, it's definitely got a lot of East Coast in. I mean, that kind of stuff's changed, obviously, around the 70s. I mean, like you say, in San Francisco, when I was growing up, we had Bobby Hutcherson, Joe Henderson, Woody Shaw, George Cables. They were all living in San Francisco, and their bands were playing. So that was, that was a pretty, and Keystone Corner was going. It was a deep East Coast type experience. I mean, that was Art Blakey was there, Ross on Roland Kirk, Max Roach, Elvin Jones, George Benson. Every week it was somebody like that for 6 nights in the club. So I was well taken care of in terms of being brought up in the lineage of the music.
So I'm being told that there's a bad echo in my voice. I don't know if you can hear it.
No, I can't hear it at all.
I can hear it, so it's messing with me a little bit.
Okay.
But evidently it's playing through.
Damn earphones off. Play.
I know, but then I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not necessarily the worst thing.
I'll just have to read your lips. George Bush.
You'd be just like my wife.
I'm not going there.
Yeah.
So enough talking. We'll let you play, Bruce.
Okay, you want me to play something now? Okay,
yeah, go for it.
All right.
We'll talk more.
Yeah. Okay. Can't hear you now.
That unmute there.
Yeah, there you go.
And I'm sure that
echoes back. It was a piano summon. I felt like I'd play a parlor piece for you guys. You know what I mean?
Oh my goodness.
That was actually from Eddie Lang in early 1920s. I mean, I didn't do it exactly like he does it, but you know, it's basically his song.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that
one. Oh. People are checking in.
We got some people here, or is it just like a jazz gig? Nobody's here.
Right. So every one of these shows, I apologize for the echo. I actually don't know what to do about it.
I can't hear it, so you're the only one.
Bruce can't help it, but everybody else is going nuts. And consequently, I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay.
Anyways. Why don't we just carry on? And I'll remember what was intelligent.
I can just introduce myself. So, Bruce, how old are you? Okay, where were you born? Okay, cool.
No, we don't want to hear that. Bruce is old enough to vote. And he has to pay taxes.
Yeah, baby.
So.
Baby.
nice, Bruce.
Well, I gotta hit something. My screen went to sleep, so I was just praying that it didn't cut me off.
No, that's great.
Cool. Yeah. I saw somebody chime in. Yes, that was a song by Baden-Powell. It was called El Astronauto. He wrote that when the first guys went in, the Sputnik, the first satellite or whatever, the first space shot by the Russians in 57, I think, something like that. But it's a cool little piece. It's kind of got a lot of one-note samba in it and a lot of stuff in it,
Joe Beam kind of things.
Yeah. Here I am. I realize I've played one kind of bebop thing and a kind of an old swing style guitar thing, and now a samba. I'm obviously very mixed up human being. You know what I mean?
Oh no, that's
I'm genre challenged.
That's the paella of a jazz artist.
And I'm wearing cowboy clothes. This
is cowboy. I love. We talked about this. The difference between your persona, which looks like you should be a country western guy, and instead you're a ferocious bebopper.
Well,
woe to those who think they're going to call, left my dog to die in the road. You know that?
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's it's the gumbo of life.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit earlier before we broadcast that Wayne Shorter, of course, is a profound impact on all music, really, in our time. And I'm just wondering if you had any tunes of his that were important to you, or just listening to music. We were talking about Danny earlier. I know that particular period of the I want to call again the Cubist and the Impressionists of post-bop.
Right.
Really impacted a lot of us of our generation.
Yeah. Well, very much. Wayne. We all go through our periods of getting into people. Wayne was a big one for me, and I just loved his playing, particularly wow, that period with Art Blakey, and then through Miles, and then after that all the Blue Note stuff. Actually, one of his songs, I think I've rewritten it twice for my own songs. Black Nile. I have a record called In Transit. It's an old organ trio record I did, and that tune In Transit it goes like. That thing. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, so I think I have two songs based on that chord progression, and that vibe. Of course, so much of Wayne's music and just his spirit, and the way he incorporated Brazilian music in that Native Dancer record with Milton Nascimento was just. Again, he sort of one of the many people that come along that embodies the spirit of what the music really is about,
Sponging all the other influences.
There's a guy, it's like they become these people that only need one name.
That's right.
Like Prez and Pops,
Wayne,
and and Duke and Monk and
Train
and Wayne and Herbie. There's these guys who just like you don't need to say anymore. They have an indelible print, and it's so unique and yet so expansive. It's just real inspiring. I think, and I know we've talked over the years about about, you know, what the music's really about. And, you know, it's more than just the notes and the rhythms. You know, it's the vision one has for it. It's the intent one has in doing it. It's the commitment to it. It's the honesty of who you are and accepting the risk of going further. And all at once, it's an act of love and sincerity and commitment and protest. It's got all that in it, you know. I mean, it's just so alive with life, and I really believe that that's why I play this music, because people like that so showed me a way. I mean, not to say that I'm just trying to be in the club, but I'm living my life. It's almost like it's a religion, like you have an ethos that you subscribe to and live by.
I think that's so eloquently put. Because for myself, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm an atheist. And yet, because of my experience playing in groups, I've seen this kind of human spirit that transcends the intellectual. You know, I mean, there's just some kind of like when the zone happens. I've seen this, and obviously you have, but when we get in the zone and the thing takes off, and it goes beyond any individual, and it's just something amazing. And to me, that was the most spiritual proof for me. And so what you're saying really resonates because it's a certain kind of commitment. It's also once you tasted this forbidden fruit, you can't accept any other way of doing it. So
right. It becomes a way of doing. I mean, like that's the difference when it's like it becomes an ethos, because it's not really what you're doing, it's the way you're doing it that matters. It starts to take on that element. And for me, that's where, you know, I've always gravitated to players who are like that. I've always just kind of gone for that and just, you know, accepted, you know, the humanity in it, because believe me, when I'm going for stuff, I don't know if I'm ever going to get it, and I just have to deal with what I get and kind of somehow patch together this search for the reality. And you know, when I'm playing by myself, it's one thing, but of course when you then have the dynamics of being able to do that in a group with other people, that's when it really elevates to yet another level. And it demands more of you, because you have to be aware of everybody else on that path too. And and so, yeah, I mean, I hope Wayne is okay wherever he is and whatever he's doing. And, you know, there's a man who's left an indelible mark on this music and on this planet, and showed us all, beyond the music, a way of being, a way of approaching life.
Yeah. Well, with that, I'm going to let you play some more, Bruce.
Oh, okay. I'll think of something to do here. You know, go back to swinging.
Bravo.
Yeah. Yeah, pops, baby. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Nice.
All that history dripping in there.
Yeah,
Oh,
man.
So nice.
So
It
you've
sure
done
is
a
fun to
couple
do
of
this.
movie scores.
Yeah. I worked with Clint Eastwood on 3 different movies.
What
What was that like?
It was great. He works very different from like movie scoring. Technically, you'd have to say he wrote the music. What he does is he tells me the vibe of the movie. You know, I don't really get a chance to play along with it. And he tells me what the movie's about, and then he has a theme that he's written. So he goes over to the piano and he plays the theme for me, and I sort of transcribe it, you know, and ask general questions, you know, like does he hear it major or minor, that kind of thing. And then with that information, I sit down and compose a suite of variations on his theme. And then that's it. I mean, it's an hour and a half. I mean, I always tell him, hey, if you find something you really like, why don't you get me to come back and show me what it is you really like, and I'll give you a whole lot more of that, or dig deeper there. Because, you know, I'm good at like just coming up with stuff.
Yeah.
You know. But he never called me back. It was always just like, boom, that's great. You know, he's a real jazz aficionado and really likes the moment. You know,
He just gave it to his son Kyle, right?
So
yeah, and Kyle,
Take it, make it.
yeah, Kyle has taken over a lot of that, and so and Lenny Niehaus, who just passed away yesterday, I believe.
Oh wow.
Or today. He orchestrated some, like the one movie that I did the most work on, or he used the most of my work, was $1 Million Baby, which was the one that won the Academy Award. And so behind that, Lenny Niehaus orchestrated a lot of stuff too. So it's not just solo guitar. Some of my solo guitar actually had orchestral support, even though I wasn't there playing it at the time. And you know, you could say there was a lot of stuff in there that kind of varied pretty far from his melody. But
Right,
you know,
right.
I would start with like a thing. You know, I think it was like a. You know, that was kind of the thing. You know, that was kind of basically the theme. And I asked him, well, do you hear that as major? you know, that kind of thing, or is it minor, you know? And so, like he said, no, I like the major, and so I would start with that, and I just give him plaintive, because he gave me, like with that movie, he gave me 4 words. He said, I want Missouri, back porch, melancholy, searching sound.
Interesting.
So like it was very plaintive, and I used an acoustic guitar, you know, and then I just started like kind of, you know, and I just, then I eventually ended up kind of into various tempos and various moods and various registers. You know, I just imagined if I were writing the film score with that as my motif, then all the things that I would write, and I just sort of spontaneously composed all that. And he cut it up, and it ended up being like half the music for that movie.
You nailed it.
And then, and I did 2 others. Flavor. Yeah, and I did 2 others. One called "Flags Are Our Fathers," which I just did like about a 5-minute scene in that. Although I gave him as much music. I mean, he gave me like, okay, it's like the war, and like it's after the war, and they're prisoners, and blah blah blah, and they've come home and they don't know, you know. So that's what he wanted there. He likes depressing themes, and then the 3rd one I did was Hereafter, which he didn't star in. He produced it. It was with Matt Damon. It's about a guy who kind of sees into the next life. You know what I mean? Kind of.
Oh, I'm not sure if I'm familiar with
the other world. It's kind of an Orpheus type of thing. And
Hereafter.
And that one I got to do the most varied work on. I mean, I played 3 different guitars, and the ending credits in particular, I kind of took his theme and did a whole contrapuntal improvisation on it, which I don't know. I mean, I'm still listening to it today, and I don't know what I was doing. But during the ending credits, he put all that. That was the, you know.
I'm going to check that movie out.
Yeah, it's an okay movie. It's about a guy who, like, if he touches you, he can see into your future.
Oh, yes.
You know, it's Matt Damon.
Sort of a dead zone kind of.
He's got this power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I think Kyle. That's when Kyle kind of took over. He called me for the next one, and I was up at I don't know if you know the Port Townsend Jazz Festival up in Washington, and I was playing up there, and he called me, and he said, "Hey, I got another one. I want you to come in and do it." And I said, "Oh man, I'm up for the weekend." You know, and when Clint calls you, it's like he doesn't want to wait till tomorrow. I mean, when I did $1 Million Baby, the movie came out. I went to the screening of it less than a week later, 10 days later. I mean, the music is the positive last thing they do. You know, they have source music while they're making the movie. They've got source music and they're editing and everything, and then they do the music to fit all the edits, and boom, it's done. So literally, I did that thing for $1 Million Baby, and I was at the cast and crew screening the next week. So
that's amazing.
So he was in a hurry. He calls me up. He's like, I got this new movie. I want you to do it. And I said, Clint, I'm up at this festival in Washington. I said, you got a plane, don't you? And he said, yeah. And I said, why don't you just fly up and hang out at the festival? We'll find a studio. We'll do it. You know, it only takes us a couple hours, you know. And he says, yeah, that's a great idea. I never heard from him. But that was
somebody else.
That movie was Gran Torino.
Oh.
So I missed out on that. Yeah. So
well, why don't we let you do a little of that contrapuntal work?
Well, you heard me kind of do it. It was really inspired by a guy named Jimmy Wyble, if you've ever heard of him. For those who Wyble. And there were a lot of great guitar players that did it. Lenny Breau and Ted Green and George Van Epps, of course. But like it's kind of like taking just where we normally a guitar player might play a chord like, you know, something like that or that, and where you kind of first of all you break it apart. You know, just in the blues. starts there, and then you start moving the voices, of course. So. Stuff like that. You know, I mean, it's kind of another way. I mean, it's, I guess, a piano player that you would just do that naturally because your hands lend yourself. But guitar players were kind of taught to go, you know, play the blocks. And it was Jimmy, you know, I mean, I was always, because I played piano first, I was always into like descending bass against things. That was always like a cool thing I did on piano as a kid. And so, you know, like you take a tune like, I don't know, that tune, you know, Polka Dots and Moonbeams. And, you know, I think I heard George Cables do this first, you know. You know, like how you hear things moving down, or, you know. And it's really stupidly difficult on the guitar. And
so of course you do it.
Yeah, so I mean, I mean, it's like you got voices in your head, and you have to figure out a way to find them. And so I started there, and then when I heard Jimmy start to really break things up that way, it just sort of made me realize, it reminds me of that, it's some sort of, I think, a Buddhist thing about how, like, you look at an anthill from a distance, and this is the way, I mean, chords are for me. You look at an anthill at a distance, you see a big blob of black. You know what I mean? And that's your first, like, just being hit by a wall of sound as you're learning music and you're becoming aware of sounds. And then as you move closer to this anthill, you realize, oh, those are ants. It's not a big black blob. And I think that's where you start to hear a chord and you just start to hear the value of it. You know what I mean? It's like you'll hear, oh yeah, I can hear that major. Oh, I hear that color of a sixth or a ninth. You know, you're just starting to kind of get that sense about it. And then if you move closer to the anthill, you go, holy shit, those ants are moving. And that's like that's where I kind of went to at that moment, was like, wow, rather than these chords just being blocks of sound, which have color and value, now I hear all that in there. You want to hear a major chord there, but you can, you know, with the old church cage, whatever, you know, I mean, that's kind of what happened to me. It's like, oh my God, you know, they're moving. And it's sort of kind of ruined me and opened up a whole new door. I mean, naturally, when I'm accompanying somebody, I'm not going to play that much stuff. It's just not, I wouldn't even hear it then. But there are moments when you're comping when they leave a space that, you know, you can play a little counter melody or you can be real subtle with it. And it's just a different way of hearing that sort of happened to me. And that's like, again, back to those guys with the one name that we mentioned earlier, you know, the Train, Wayne, Bird guys, Monk. The real gift of them, and of course I have many other people who are not famous to other people that are equally, really equally important to me musically. But the one thing I can say they all have in common is they all changed the way I hear.
Oh.
You know, I
That's
mean,
an
it's like,
interesting way of putting it.
like, no, really. I mean, you know, I mean, I love the way a lot of guys play, but there's these certain people who are pivotal in my life. Many of the famous ones I mentioned, and maybe these other guys that that I grew up around who enlightened me. And it's really, as a musician, they changed the way I hear. I mean, I can remember I was this way, and then I met them, and I was this way. And that's about the biggest gift you can give another musician, really.
That's
It's
funny
funny
you should say that because I sort of remember my anthill moment when you go from a place of like you can't hear what you can't hear. And so when somebody opens your perception and reveals this previously a lump of sound into a much like an open flower. It's like suddenly you see, oh, look at all these petals, look at all these things, these components, these oh my God. And at the risk of stealing a little bit of your time, I remember doing a benefit for Greenpeace. I may be the only human who's ever done a Jazz for Greenpeace benefit. But 50 musicians came out. It was a wonderful thing. But one of the organizers, we met at a Monday night when we were running a session there. And so the musicians would get going, and usually they would hang over. But one of the organizers said, she revealed to me that she didn't understand. She heard it as a big black blob, you know, just a thing. You know, she thought there was no organization or anything like that to the music. So the cats were playing like a blues or something, and I started pointing to her. I said, "Listen for the repeating. Like here's listen to this. 4 bars later goes here, and it goes here." And she started hearing. And her eyes were like, "Oh my goodness! It's she suddenly could hear. You know, the blob was it's moving, and she suddenly could hear it, and it was just so amazing to see somebody discovering jazz for the first time. Sort of just cacophony and noise suddenly becoming a flower in front of them, and it was just amazing to watch somebody else see that. And the thing you describe, of course, happens for every student of the music. You know, whether you're playing or not, you start digging into it. But suddenly, when the blob emerges as something moving, and you recognize that there's ants. Or whatever. That's a really great way of putting it.
Yeah, you know, and the gift you gave her is one of the biggest gifts in the world you can give anybody, because imagine what it's done for you, just being able to hear sound in an organized way. Because my suggestion to you is she also heard classical music that way. And so, you know, to really be able to give somebody the gift of opening up a door, you know, to a room of limitless nuance and texture and feeling and emotion. And, you know, that's a great gift you can give somebody. And that's kind of what we musicians, that's our magic. That's our Orpheus, effect, if you want for anything better to say. So,
well, my crowd's complaining about my echo. So I'm going to play some more.
Well, I'm going to actually show and tell here. I have a project I've been doing. I'm going to try and get there. It's probably up. You can see that, I think. I've got a show called The Red Guitar. You'll notice the red guitar. And this guitar, much to kind of what we're talking about here. At one point in my life, this guitar sort of grabbed me. I was at an international guitar festival, and this guitar was sitting all by itself, and it's so red and rockabilly looking that jazz guitar players wouldn't go near it, you know. And it had been made by this great luthier over there. This was over in England, but the luthier's from Germany. And I just felt bad that no one was playing it or trying it out. And so I played it, and it went like, just like it had, first of all, it has so much acoustic sound. I'm sure that people can kind of hear a blend of the amplifier and the acoustic, but just acoustic alone. Can't imagine what that feels like up against my belly. You know what I mean? That's like amazing. I mean, like you horn players have that amazing vibration from the horn, and and the guitar has that. So I just found this guitar, and I got this red guitar, and like very soon after I got it, I was playing a concert with about 10 guitar players. You know, one of those jamoramas. And right afterwards, I was walking down the street, going out to dinner or something, and two guys were walking in front of me, and one says to the other, he says, "Did you hear that guy tonight?" And the guy said, "Which one?" And he says, "Oh, the one with the red guitar." And when I heard that phrase, it immediately like made me think, because I've always been just really enthralled with the story of the red shoes and of the red violin, and how the idea that an inanimate object can take over a person's life and their soul. It's very much the Faustian and Orpheus type ideas throughout mythology. And I've always just been wondering why the music even picked me. And so I wrote a show. I was given a commission by an art center to do an original piece, and I wrote a show called The Red Guitar. And I'll just do the opening part of it for everybody. So I've kept this off the internet because I wanted everybody to see it live, but now I realize when the next live gig, well, whenever that is, I'll get to do it. But here's the opening of The Red Guitar. And like I said, it's based on the red shoes and the red violin. For the people that don't have any background in those stories, the red violin is a story of a violin made by an amazing maker back in the times of Stradivarius. His wife died through the process of making the violin, and he was so distraught he took some of her blood and he put it in with the resin of the instrument, and he made an amazing instrument. But the problem is, it brought tragedy to everybody who owned it through centuries of generations. And The Red Shoes is a story about this girl. Well, the Cliff Notes version is she wants the shoes because they'll make her the prettiest girl and the best dancer, and everybody will love her. And she gets the shoes, and she's the prettiest girl and the best dancer, and everybody loves her. But we all know about fairy tales, because that's based on a fairy tale. And of course, what happens here is this is to sort of teach people not to have egos. But anyways, I didn't get that idea from the story. Anyways, so she gets the shoes. She's the prettiest girl, the best dancer, everybody loves her. But the shoes won't stop dancing, and they kill her. So on that happy note, I'm going to present the beginning of The Red Guitar. Is it my imagination? Am I playing this thing? Or is it playing me? Could be the color red. Red, fire and rage. Red, blood and passion. Red, even communists and Republicans vie for a piece of the color's precious real estate. Red, love and lust and sex and debt. Even seduction. Like in the red shoes, did the shop owner pick his victim? Did the shoes? Did the color? Be so much better if I could start this story with a knife fight in Natchez or mugging in Memphis. But isn't where you start, it's where you end up that matters.
Nice.
Yeah, that's just the opening. That's the opening salvo in a. It's about an hour-long show where I tell a story and play, which is kind of what we do anyways. It's just I happen to. You see, I'm also a writer, or I try to be, and I've show and tell.
Hold
time to do some show and tell here. Boom. Everybody want to read a novel, a jazz novel? It's called Trust Me. And this just dawned on me. I should have been more aware of this. This is also a Faustian farce. Much like I guess I have a psychological problem that I need to address. In that I'm very concerned with just the meaning of life and why we do things and how to do them to the fullest and the surrender. To really do anything, you have to surrender to it. And there's a lot of danger and there's a lot of commitment. And, and with that, that's where we stand to get the most gains. At least that's been my experience. So with this Red Guitar Show, it gives me the opportunity. I'm constantly rewriting it, and a lot of it's improvised, made up, and what I play is just sort of. I talk about my influences. That's one element of the show. I talk about how we tell stories through music. I talk about how we deal with loss of friends, lovers, parents. I talk about how we ultimately will leave the music behind for the next generation, just like we have been the beneficiaries of the people before us. And it's not really our story. It's not really my story. It's our story. And I'm just adding a chapter to it. And so that's the whole philosophy behind that. And I'm really proud. And I had been doing it a lot until the shutdown.
Right.
I was having one of my best months with it. It became my major project. I'm still playing and with my trio. I still play with a lot of other bands. But the Red Guitar kind of was becoming my main thing. And I've always been doing comedy and storytelling anyways. And I write comedy songs. So,
we'll
get
get
one of those.
do you have an adult audience?
Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
We're not going to lose like a grant or anything behind
I
it.
don't think so. No.
You're sure?
Yeah, we're running on fumes.
Okay.
Unless is this Red Fox?
No, there are no words that would ever get banned, but there are adult themes.
Okay, that's fine. We like adult themes.
Okay. Well, here's a new one I wrote. Okay. Boy, I don't think I've done this since the lockdown, so I'm hoping I remember it. But if I don't, I'll make something else up. Okay. It's hard to admit, to be so against the grain, but I'll confide this little thing, though you'll think that I'm insane. I don't like blowjobs. They're messy, so much trouble. So damn one-sided too. I hate to burst your bubble. So much capital's invested to procure that simple act. But consider the logistics and the compromise hygiene. Sorry, that's a fact. They're requested for birthdays, Christmas, even Hanukkah. Hanukkah? Wow. That means there's like 8 of them. I guess there is an advantage to being Jewish. Where was I? Forgot. Oh, yeah. I don't like blowjobs. Said never. No man ever. But remember, Mr. Bobbitt, there's always a head to sever. They're so controversial and unpatriotic, please. Every time that anthem's sung, someone's always on their knees. They're requested for birthdays, Christmas, even Hanukkah. Oh, yeah, here's where I was. Yeah. But remember all the problems and cause for Bill and Monica. I don't like blowjobs, and I'm not admitting this in haste. But with all the begging and flirt involved, and all the sweat and work involved, and all the noisy slurp involved, I really hate the taste. You asked for it, now you see? There goes your show. I'm glad this is the end of the season.
I'm trying to think the guy who does music for one of the late night talk shows is a comedian. I'm trying to think of his name. But he's got a whole series of videos doing things like that. It's like, what?
Yeah. No.
Oh my goodness.
I got a few of them myself. You know, it's like, I guess I got too much time on my hands.
We're not going there. Boom, boom. Oh my God. Well,
Yeah,
Bruce, we can go on for hours here. Why don't you take us out with one little gem of something, whatever's coming to your top of your mind.
Okay.
And we're going to close out this portion of the Newton Piano Summit online. And hopefully we'll be back either later on this year or we'll be live next year. And one of the things we do is we have somebody return from the previous year to play live. So
wow.
You're a high demand guy. You might be
okay. Well,
out of our range.
Well, you know, all I can say is I want to first of all thank you. It's people whose caring and tireless commitment to the music makes these type of, I mean, being a person who ran an organization as well, I know what a selfless and important an act it is, and I want to thank you for doing this. It's of course great to hang out with you again after all this time, but I do want to thank you and everybody who's supporting this, because you are our heroes. That's all I can say. You're my hero. So I'm going to play a song that was written by Hoagie Carmichael. It's probably one of the most famous songs in American history.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Yeah, Stardust.
Sharing your talent with us. Stardust indeed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings us to a close of another adventure. Thank you for all who have been here during the moment, which of course many more of you see this after the fact. So stay tuned.
Remember that I got my Grumps TV show. Everybody, I'm actually going to do one in about 3 hours, 2.5 hours. So it's, but they're all up on my YouTube. Yeah, Grumps TV on YouTube. Thank you, Chris. This is my way of dealing with the lockdown, you know, is like trying to keep from going insane.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. Arrivederci.
Great to hang with you, Chris. Miss you, man. Ciao.